A lot of you have been asking me for recommendations on actually affordable, non-toxic brands. And yeah, I get it. I've been sending you to ecocult.com and we have a list of super non-toxic, super safe brands, but they can be a little bit on the pricey side. So I decided to make a post about super cheap brands that you can find at the mall that are better than the rest. And how did I come up with this list? So I am very grateful to Fashion Revolution. Every year they put out something called the Fashion Transparency Index, and it doesn't rank brands on their sustainability, but it ranks them on how much information they're sharing. And even better, they let you download the entire sheet full of data, and you can download it and you can play with it. So that's what I did. And so I zeroed in on 5 different categories of what brands are sharing around their chemical management policies. And each of them came with points, and I ended up ranking the 200 largest brands in the world and putting the ones that are super cheap and very affordable into this list. And so you might be surprised by some of the brands that came out ahead. But first, let me tell you about the point system. So the things that I was looking for was, does the brand have a restricted substance list? So this is a list that the brand has decided, we don't want to see any of these hazardous substances like carcinogens, endocrine disruptors, heavy metals, sensitizers, like all of these different things. We do not want to see them in our final product. So they'll ask manufacturers to test product before they send it over. They'll have product tested, and if they find these hazardous substances at over a certain amount, they won't sell it, and they'll probably destroy it. So that's a good thing to have. There's also a manufacturer's restricted substance list. So it's different than the RSL I just talked about, because they're telling the manufacturers, we don't want you to use any of these hazardous substances in your facility around our clothing. We don't want it on our clothing. We don't want it near our clothing. We don't want it contaminating our clothing. We don't want to see it in the effluent that's coming out of the back of the factory. Don't use these substances. These things can be hundreds of substances long, or thousands of substances long. So that's another good thing that they should have. Publishing a list of facilities in their supply chain. So most fashion brands, they only know what the cut and sew factories are that they're buying from. They don't know where the fabric is coming from, who dyed it, what kind of chemicals were put on it. And if a fashion brand is actually even publishing this information, like they're saying, not only do we know it, we're just going to put it out there for the public to see, that's a really good sign that they have a good relationship with their supply chain, with the dye houses, that they're working with dye houses that they're proud to work with, not some like back alley place that's sourcing chemicals from the guy down the road because it's cheaper. Another thing that's good for fashion brands to have is a time-bound commitment to getting hazardous substances out of their supply chain. So this actually takes a lot of work and can take some years to do this. But some fashion brands have said, okay, by this year, we're going to get the hazardous substances out of our supply chain, out like completely, and out of our products. And even better, some brands say, okay, and this is how we're doing. And they disclose like how they're doing in that process. So they're not just saying we're going to do it. They're saying like, and here's how we're doing so far. Are we going to hit our mark? Are we behind? All those different things. That's a radical amount of transparency. And that's the kind of thing that we want to see. So some brands do all of this. There's like, a half dozen that do all of this. There are a lot of brands that do some of this, and there are some brands that do a little of this, and there are a ton of brands that don't do any of the things that I just described. So in this list, you're not going to see the bad ones, and also you're not going to see any high-end brands. I just pulled out the ones where you can get t-shirts for less than $20, in some cases like $11, where you can get underwear for $7 a piece, where you can get jeans for, $40 or less, or you can get sneakers for less than $50. Now, we're not going to see Shein prices in here because it's just not going to happen. So I kind of think about it like, as if you're going, if you're the kind of person who could afford to go to Panera, why would you go to McDonald's? And I know there's a lot of people out there that treat their fashion like McDonald's, where they're like, I kind of know it's bad for me, but let me just get a hamburger today. Look, if you can afford to eat better for your health, you can also afford to pay $7 for underwear instead of $3. So I would encourage you to do that if you can. So what are the best brands on this list? Well, there are some surprises here. So Levi's is on there. That's actually not a surprise to me, but maybe it's a surprise to you. Nike's on there. You might be surprised by that. Everybody remembers the scandal of the 90s of child labor, but they've really doubled down on having a manufacturer's restricted substance list and making sure their stuff is free of some of these most hazardous, carcinogenic, mutagenic, reproductive toxic substances. United Colors of Benetton, that surprised me. I didn't know that they did this, but apparently they do. Vans is also another good one. Wow, okay. Also, Columbia Sportswear, they got way better in just a year in instituting a lot of these different things. H&M is near the top. Adidas is near the top. New Balance, Target, okay, great. Old Navy is near the top, and Superdry. And then there's some that are doing a little bit, like Wrangler and Champion and Hanes and Kohl's, Mango, and Esprit. So all of these brands, I would say, if you like them and they're in your budget and they're accessible to you, I wouldn't have any problem with you buying from them. Just not for sustainability, not for labor rights or anything like that, but just in terms of toxicity, and if you're trying to keep yourself and your family safe from hazardous chemistry, these are okay. And you can find the rest. You can find the whole list and more details at ecocult.com. It's right near the top.